Hi, Courtney Sholnick.
Hello, Annie. How are you?
I'm good. So, wow, it's crazy to be back in the podcast world because I did so much podcasting a couple years ago and so excited to talk to you today on our podcast, Conscious Corner. This is Courtney Sholnick. I'm Annie Lieb, and we both have businesses we want to tell you about, and then we want to tell you about our background. We want to tell you about why we're partnering now and why it makes so much sense. Um, you said you said you wanted to ask me the questions, correct? So we'll just start there, and then we'll go into some things about you, and then we'll tell people kind of why we're doing this and how to reach us. So it's
Okay.
probably going to be like about a half hour, it might be 40 minutes, but these are all going to be probably weekly um, Conscious Corner 30 to 45-minute podcasts that people can just put on in their car or, listen to while working out or walking the dog and kind of learn more about what we do with coaching, executive life coaching, as well as mindfulness, how they mesh, and how we can help you to live a more fulfilled and authentic life together, more mindful. Make sense?
Makes total sense. Yes. So I'm going to ask a few questions
Well,
and really want to help the audience to understand a bit more about you and then to help the audience understand a bit more about myself. So just to begin, can you tell us a little bit about your journey, how you got inspired to be an executive life coach?
okay, so I'll tell the quick version. So in 2018, I decided to leave the corporate world, which I had been in for many years in pharmaceuticals, sales, and business development. And I decided to go back to school and get my executive MBA. In doing so, it was a really hard kind of time for me because I was going back to school, so I didn't have the salary anymore, and I needed to start something on the side. And my cohort that I was going to school with kind of said, Annie, you're really amazing at coaching. Like, and I'm like, what do you mean? And they said, like, you're really the person that keeps us positive, keeps us on track. Like, these are the things that I kept hearing. And you give good advice. And I was like, wow, if that's what I am in this group, like maybe that's something that I should start. So I started coaching on like a side hustle. And I got really active on LinkedIn, which is like was my baby for a while. And I got really active and posted every day. And I started talking about authenticity and my coaching business and growing it and making executives more better leaders and, personal development with professional development kind of meshed. And some really special people, high level executives, C-suite type people found me and gave me a chance to coach them and their teams. And that's how it got started. And I really leaned in 2020 when I graduated. So then I made it like my own. I thought I was going to come out and be this like management consultant, right? Like, but 2020 turned the world upside down with COVID. So I had to figure it out really quickly. So that's how it kind of started. And then really quick, I created this framework, which is really different than anything that anybody had seen because I created it, right? It's called the breath framework. So I
Yeah.
can get into that later. I can tell you now kind of, it's an acronym.
Hmm.
Do you want me to tell you now?
Yeah. I
All
think
right, so real quick, I can get into details later, but it stands for begin where you are, reclaim your power, excavate your core values, allow, through, and heal. So BREATH. Breath is a really important word to me because when I was like 2014, I'd split from my husband and I had two little kids. It was a really hard time and I was very down. And I thought to myself, you can strip everything from me, but you can't strip my breath. Like that's mine.
Mhm.
And that's how breath framework came about years later. So it kind of ties into a hard time in my life. And that's the coaching program and framework I started. And these executives gave me a chance and I grew it and grew it and grew it and grew my audience on LinkedIn. And people knew Annie Lieb was authenticity, was working with executives, but it was like different. It's executive life coaching, right? It's always life coach or executive coach. And I kind of merged the two,
Mhm.
which made it kind of different than people had been used to. So super hard in the beginning, as always, to start your business. I don't know if it's for other people, but super hard. I mean, from everything from doing finances to, getting guests on podcast, everything, marketing. And I just slowly grew it. And that brings us to 2024, where, I have a successful business, and I've been coaching executives in life coaching for a few years. My framework is great. I do a 3 and 6 month program. I re-meet you after many, many years of knowing your husband, working with him many years ago. I re-meet you. Let's say re-meet, even though we've, known each other the whole time.
Yeah.
And you tell me what you're doing, which you'll get into, which is mindfulness training and coaching and being an attorney, but that's just beside the point. And I'm like, wait a minute. And you're like, wait a minute. And we said, wow, what we're both doing makes so much sense together. So not only do we have our separate businesses, but we merge as well, like we partner. So this is why we're doing this. It's called Conscious Corner, because we're going to talk to people about how executive life coaching merges with mindfulness and how mindfulness merges with executive life coaching. So that's the short story. Can you imagine what the long one sounds like?
No, it makes perfect sense. And I can say, I'm so glad that the people that you were in school with encourage you to go in this direction, because just even before all that, when I first met you, your energy, your positivity, even before all of this training could be felt. So what a gift that now you can bring your authenticity combined with your professional training and really offer such a gift in return to others. So thank you for sharing
Maybe I should
that.
have you do a commercial for me, because that's like really exactly what I'm trying to do. So thank you.
Of course. And I love also what you said, or really what your framework is, the acronym breath, because with mindfulness, as we'll get into, John Kabat-Zinn, who's the pioneer of a foundational program known as the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, what he says is that as long as we're breathing, there's more right with us than wrong, no matter what's wrong. So, and as long as we're alive, we always have our breath. As you said, like you can't take that away. So how powerful and what a safe haven for us to always turn to. So it sounds like you've connected with that, and in return, you're able to share
Thank you.
how powerful that can be for others. So I have a few questions more to ask you. What are some of the challenges that you see your clients grappling with that you're able to help them with through your coaching?
So a lot of people that I've met, particularly executives, and I would say higher level executives, but really anybody that I've met with, any kind of something that they're trying to overcome. Like, for example, they're doing well in their career. They have a wife or husband or partner. They have kids, but like they're not happy. Why am I not fulfilled? Why am I not happy? And I'm big into core values. That's like a huge part of my program. And it wasn't until I figured out and excavated my core values that I started my real journey. And so what I find are people that don't know their core values, don't know how to find them, don't understand what authenticity is a buzzword, right? And it has been for a few years. But the authenticity that I talk about is very different than the buzzword authenticity. So I find inauthentic people that mean to be real and genuine, but they don't know how. So that hurts them in leadership. It hurts them in being, emotionally agile. It hurts them in their relationships with their communication. So those are some of the things that I see these people, like you said, grappling with. And we work through my program, and it helps them to overcome these obstacles, whether at home or at work. And that's sort of like the merging that my program touches on, that I think is so important. It's like, how many people do you talk to that are totally fulfilled? There's just, maybe I'm wrong, but the people I've talked to are like, well, I'm not. What does fulfillment mean? I've had people say, what are core values? I didn't know what they were a few years ago. So
Can I interrupt and ask, just out of curiosity, what are some of your core values
I'll
that
tell
you
you
were
all
able
of
to
them.
excavate? Let's hear.
So there are love, freedom, perseverance, trust, and truth. So 2 of which I have tattooed on my left arm. So this is truth. That means that it's written in Hebrew. It's hard to like. It says Emet, and then I have freedom. right there,
Good.
because they mean so much to me. I hope my dad's not watching. I don't think he's ever acknowledged
That was my next question. How do your
that I
parents
have a
feel?
tattoo. I don't think if anyone is not understanding this, when you're Jewish, you're not really supposed to get a tattoo. It's not really totally true anymore, but desecrating your body. And my dad's never acknowledged them. He just acts like he doesn't see them. But like the first year I got freedom, I wore a sweatshirt. My son's like, it's 85 degrees, mom. Like, take the sweatshirt off. So anyway, so
You just have to put your dad underneath the love tattoo, and then it'll
well,
all make sense.
I have a lot. So you're right. So as soon as my stepmom saw Hebrew, she's like, oh, dad'll be fine with it. So, but we never talked about it, and this is years. So I figured those out by doing, without getting too into it, my excavation process. And there's a test that I have people take. There's exercises that they go through. I do this thing where I have them visualize. They tell me what they're visualizing, and there's, a lot that goes along with that. And then I sort of help them dig out or excavate what their core values are. Because Courtney, when I figured out mine, it was like the beginning of my story. Like,
Yeah.
of course, I had a story before that, right? But
Yeah.
like, I didn't know myself. I didn't know who I was, what I wanted, what my passions were, like how to make an impact, how
Hmm.
to lead
Yeah.
as a mom, a wife,
Yeah.
and as a leader at work. So I was
Yeah.
like pretty misaligned. So once I figured that out, and then, I'm talking to people about business and they're like, Annie, like you need to figure out how to teach people how to do this because it's amazing that you've done this for yourself. So my favorite part about my whole business journey and life, this part of my life's journey is that I teach people the things that I learned. Like I went
You
through
went
it. I
through
didn't
them.
learn this in a book,
Right. Right.
and that's great if people can learn stuff in medical journals. That's awesome. Like, but that's not me. I learned this through life experience. I got
Hmm.
certified in coaching, but that didn't help me to help people get more fulfilled. It's my
Right. Right. You rolled your sleeves up, you got your hands dirty like you were in it, you felt it and you went through it, you experienced it. And
I
I think
did.
that when you can relate to what so many of your clients are going through, like that only allows you to help them even more. You've been there.
Exactly.
You're in it. So that's incredible. And I sort of, as I'm listening to you, I mean, just considering the time of when you really went through all of this and juggling a family, and, I mean, that just shows the commitment and resilience that are within you, and how much you love yourself, like to
Well,
really,
I needed to find that
yeah,
self-love, right? Like I
yeah,
did, to your point, I did not have that. Or I had a little, but I didn't understand the gravity of not having that,
right, right,
right? Like that self-love and self-compassion is really, it's like the best when you can find that. And that, you know what, you made it clear. I just like, you nailed it. That's the thing that I find people the most grappling with is lack of self-love and lack of self-compassion.
and
And
that's
that's what I teach them. It's like, whoa, why are you beating yourself up for that? And like Brene Brown, I don't know how familiar you are. I use a lot of her stuff. I love her. Like the whole guilt and shame,
mhm.
guilt, I feel bad, shame, I am bad.
Yeah,
I talk about a lot of that a lot with people because that weighs you down. It just weighs you down. So working through that is really helpful.
that's sort of the repeat offender in a sense that comes up for a lot of my students and even myself. Like we tend to be very judgmental of ourselves and we criticize
Yeah.
ourselves. I actually posted something today on LinkedIn about that. Like we can be so quick to forgive others, but how much of a hard time we give ourselves. And when we can be, more compassionate, more kind, and have more self-love, how freeing that can be, and how much more joy, how much more we can open up to what's here, even when what's here may not feel warm and fuzzy, but it all begins with being kind to ourselves. And I think in the world that we live in, sometimes we're conditioned to be less
Yeah.
than kind.
And this is different. Like I totally agree with you. And this is why you do what you do, mindfulness teaching and coaching, but because you know about that stuff. But like I always say, treat like for 1 second, step back and talk to yourself in your head like you would your best friend. And
Mhm.
every time the person's like, this is not what I would say.
Yeah.
And I'm like, exactly. And when you
Yeah.
can learn to do that without, and look, I'm human, you're human. Doesn't mean I'm like this Buddhist that every time I'm going through something, I'm like so gentle and compassionate with myself. But
Yeah.
it's really a learning and a muscle, I believe, that when you strengthen, you
Mm-hmm.
kind of just slow it down. And that's what the mindfulness helps with, at least in my opinion. And we'll get into you in a minute and your stuff. But like when you can slow down and breathe and kind of say, you know what? I'm just not going to blame myself for that right now because that's not serving you.
Yeah.
Right? It's not
Yeah.
serving. I say that a lot in my coaching. Like, is this thought or action serving you in any way?
Right. And mindfulness, now that you're touching upon that, mindfulness really is the ability to notice what doesn't serve us. So when we can strengthen our awareness in the present moment, that really becomes the gateway to finding more supportive ways to be with ourselves. So,
I love
um,
that. I love all your verbiage that you use. That's what so attracted me to you. When like it's not like I mean, I
we're
think you're
attracted to
beautiful,
each
but
other.
like I do have a husband, but like attracted me to your whole business and the way you plan things and do things and your program is that you just know how to put it. Whereas there's certain things I know how to put, but that's why we partner well, I think,
You put it
because
perfectly. Everything you say lands perfectly in my world. It's all about perspective,
well,
Annie. It's
it
it's
is, you're
working in
right.
my
But like
world.
when you say notice things and like, when you start to notice and like, I can't read my writing here, but I wrote like, what doesn't serve you? Like, what doesn't serve you? And like, when you start to be able to come up with that awareness and step back and whatever you said, that was brilliantly said. People can rewind if they want. But, that's when, I was going to say, my brain's all over the place. Before this, by the way, Courtney was like, she hasn't done a ton of podcasts, and she was like, like, is it going to be all right, Annie? And I was like, I am like, I've done live shows. Like, I'm like, hold on a second, someone Amazon's at the door. Like, it's
Well,
just it is what it is, right? Like, it is what it is. People are going to
no,
listen,
that's a perfect example. That just goes to show you the perfectionist in me and the
and that can
constant.
be
So,
beautiful. That perfectionism
yeah,
is also tenacious, and you want to do it right. And
right.
I don't have that. I want it to be right, but
Yeah.
I don't. I'm relaxed. Let's say right here. If I was giving a speech in front of hundreds of people, I would be scared out of my mind. But on a podcast, I've done hundreds of these, right? So, and think about, do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
I listen to a decent amount. Yeah.
Yeah. So like some of them are formal, but some of them are just conversation, right? Like
Yeah.
I want to hear what you have to say, what I have to say. Like it's just back and forth more so than it is like, Courtney, you said that wrong. I can't really say that. Anyway, what I was going to say, shoot, now I forget what I was going to say. Oh, what I was going to say is the way you framed mindfulness made so much sense. And people think that mindfulness is this Zen Buddha, like, you have to be in this other world and it's just not always like that, right?
Right.
Sometimes you do the things you do to get centered,
Hmm.
which you'll talk about, right? So that you can be more present for your partner, for your kids, for your work,
Yeah.
whomever. And doing the exercise isn't about calming yourself always in the moment. It's learning
Exactly.
the moves. So that was my whole big long answer
That
there.
I'm really glad you're saying that because there's a misconception, I think, that by practicing mindfulness, we're going to become our most calm, relaxed selves. And we can, like the practices, as we'll get into, really can incline ourselves in the direction of relaxation. But it's more about the awareness piece. So we can strengthen our ability to see clearly what's here in this moment. And it may not be feeling calm, it may not be feeling
Right. But you
peaceful, but
see it.
we want
You
to
know
see it, right? Because getting back to what serves us, if we just keep going in doing mode, like what's been coined autopilot mode, when we
Yeah.
just keep going in that way and we don't take moments to check in on ourselves to see, like, what's here? Like, what am I telling myself? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? Well, then we just perpetuate things that really don't serve us. But when we can slow down and see what's here, even when it's not how we want to feel, for example, calm, relaxed.
Yeah.
We can learn, how can I support myself to be with what
Yes.
is? Because the truth of the matter
Totally.
is we can't control, we can't control so many things in our lives. There's another saying you might like we can't stop the waves, but we can learn to ride them or to surf them.
Yes.
So it's really about how can we be with what is, and how can we really optimize our ability, whether it's in our profession, in our personal lives. So I wanted to ask you one more question, if that's
Go ahead. Yeah.
okay.
And then it's your turn.
Yeah, so I just want to give listeners an idea. If they were to work with you, what can they expect in terms of expectations on the time part? Because I know, as someone who teaches mindfulness, especially with something like the longer programs, people get spooked because we work with a lot of professionals. They're squeezed already. They're any given
Yeah.
moment
A
they can
great
feel like,
question.
yeah, they're pulled in 12 different directions. They have to-do list for their work, they have to-do lists for their kids or their families, their pets, friends,
Yep.
whoever in their lives. So sometimes it just can feel like I don't have room to add one more thing to my plate.
Mhm.
So can you explain for our listeners, how do you work with a busy professional who really wants to benefit from your guidance, but is concerned about how this may work for them?
Great question. So, first of all, and you'll totally, I think, relate to this. I'm not saying that people are squeezed for time, not squeezed for time, but I will tell you, you make time for what you want to make time for, right? It's the same as going to the gym. It's the same as eating mindfully. It's the same as spending time with your partner, your
Yeah.
kids, right? So
Yeah.
even if you have a job where you're working 12 to 14-hour days, right?
Yeah.
You're going to do that and you're going to burn yourself right into the ground. So how are you prioritizing your mental health? And that's what this is about, both your program and my program and the
Yeah.
programs together. So if your question was, if they want to benefit from your program, how do you do it? Or if they like the way it sounds. So I would need 50 minutes a week for 3 months, that's 12 sessions,
Okay.
or 6 months, that's 24 sessions. I am very flexible. I don't have to have you Tuesday at 10 a.m. every week. I understand that things come up. This happens all the time with my clients, right? They can switch. I'll work it out. I work from home. Like, I do a million things and things change. My kid has a doctor's appointment, whatever.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really have to be 24 consecutive weeks. So relax in that regard. The other part is there any more time? I give some assignments. There's nothing lengthy. I respect people's time. I'm not asking you to do like a 6-hour journaling activity.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
might say, can you take 15 minutes and listen to this over the week? Right. So I try to meet people. Sometimes I do biweekly. Like, sometimes it makes more sense for the person and what they're dealing with to do it once every other week. But
Right.
typically I will tell you the best results come from weekly. And like, I would say the best results come from a 6-month program, but I can definitely make an impact in 3 months. So that's not that long of a time to take out of your life to then, like, one other thing is like what you and I are starting, which is, well, I know how to preach mindfulness, right? Like, but I don't really know how to teach mindfulness at all. So that's why you are so golden to me too, because then it's like, if there's, you want to continue what you've learned in my coaching and learn more mindfulness, you have similar programs time wise. You even have a shorter program at 6 weeks
Yeah.
that you've mastered. So you could do mindfulness training after my coaching, or you could start with mindfulness training, dip your toe in the water, and then get into my coaching. But neither of us ask for that much time. So if people are thinking that, I feel like, let me help them understand that it's really not as much as you might think. It's just overwhelming to
Yeah.
me.
And I think it's both of our programs. The great thing about it is it's adaptable. So depending on the
Yes.
demands of any person's particular schedule, it can be shaped so that it doesn't feel overwhelming. The last thing we want is something that's
I don't want
designed
any more.
to reduce stress, brings on more stress. So,
I
so
have,
I,
Courtney, most of my, I would say, like, I don't say this to toot my own horn, but like 90% of my clients come and they're like, "Oh, I was looking forward to this session. This is really just, it's not a nuisance. It's more of, I'm sure they do that with you too, because it's so like calming and relaxing, they're learning mindfulness finally, right? It's just like they're like, oh, I was looking forward to this. It's not
Yeah.
like, and I've had clients cancel. I can't do this week. I'm bogged down. I have that 5-10% of the time where we have to move it. I've even seen a client on Saturday or Sunday because that's the only time they can do it. Is that
Likewise,
having
yeah.
bad boundaries? Probably. But I love my clients and I want to help them. So if for some reason once I have to see you on a Saturday, I'll make that work. So
Same, same.
both be flexible.
Yeah. Well, thanks for
Of
answering all
course.
of the questions I asked, and I can share a bit about myself if
Yeah, I would love for you to.
you like.
So yeah, so I'm not even gonna look at the questions week because I have some I just from my heart I want to ask you. So
I love
um
how you work. I'm very much like, let me check off each one. And
well
you're
that's
like,
why we work well together. It's like my husband. He's like,
yeah.
he's an ex-accountant and he's like Excel spreadsheet. I'm all over the map, right? Like I'm just gonna talk to you from my heart. He's like, but I
Yeah.
need you to check the boxes
Right.
here. So that I think works well together. So tell me a little bit about how you got into mindfulness teaching and coaching. Like how did this all start? 'Cause that's not how your career started. So I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah. And I'll give the more succinct version because it's more
We can get more
complicated,
into it
but
too. This is not our only podcast together, right? We're
yeah.
going to continue this.
Yeah, so the long and short of it is really I came into mindfulness because of my own experience with stress and anxiety. From as far back as I can remember, I was a worrier. I remember I have an older brother where we've always been super close. He's 3 years older, 2.5 years older. And I remember being in middle school thinking, oh my gosh, what's life going to be like when he goes away to college? I mean, like, that's how far off
And I'm
my
worried.
mind would go. It wasn't always rosy. Like, I would, you know, link up with the most horrendous, catastrophic scenario. And that just sort of morphed as I moved into adolescence. I found myself worrying about what's to come or getting back to the judgmental piece, giving myself a hard time, not being good enough, or I could have done that better. And so it sort of just grew as I moved into different parts of my life. I started to notice it speak louder. So after college, I sort of contemplated law school. I took 3 years off and wasn't sure about what to do. I have a lot of artistic talents, but I felt like that wasn't good enough. Like I have to do something that's more this or that. So I ended up going to law school. All throughout law school, question, did I make the right decision? Not feeling like I was smart enough, but that sort of pesky little voice just spoke louder and louder. I ended up getting married during law school. After I graduated law school and began working in a large firm, again, still questioning, like, do I belong here?
Mhm.
What am I doing here as a litigator? Is this right? Is this wrong? We had our first son, and I noticed the anxiety started to grow. The more full my life got with good things, I noticed I was sort of struggling with how to balance the demands of work with being a mom and a wife. In between our first son and our second son, we had some complications with pregnancies. And throughout it all, I just kept sort of pushing through, didn't miss a day of work, and really just wanted to be great at what I was doing, but not allowing myself to slow down and check in on how I was. So fast forward, we have our second son who is the best sleeper out of our three sons, hands down now, best sleeper. First year of his life, terrible.
Yeah.
So here I am, working a full-time job, having abundance of cases, trying to take care of a toddler, a newborn. When I was at home, I was feeling like, what am I missing? What deadlines did I miss at work? And when I'm at work, I was feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm the worst mom. I didn't do this or I wasn't present for that. And there was this sort of backwards, forward thinking, beating up on myself. And then I had actually been earlier suggested, but it was suggested by a therapist who I'd been treating with to better manage stress and anxiety, to look into the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, which is the foundational 8-week program. It's offered, I'm in the Philadelphia area, so it's offered at Jefferson, the Center for Mindfulness. But the thought of adding something else to my plate at that time,
Answer your question about.
yeah, I mean, it just overwhelmed me. But I'd say the straw that broke the camel's back, where I just sort of like stopped in my tracks and really felt just how anxious I was and sad. It was when my dog passed away. He sort of,
Jackson.
Jackson, yes, he embodied mindfulness for me. He was that pause that really allowed me to experience such joy. And so when he passed away, I think everything that I had just been suppressing, it just spoke that much louder. So I finally realized I can't go on like this. I wasn't feeling joy.
And there were no mental health days then. There wasn't like you're going to take a mental health day. They didn't,
No.
that's like a new thing.
Yeah.
People didn't do that. You just went to work, you had your babies, you were mothered, you cooked, you cleaned,
Yes.
you wifed, and you were like burning, diving your head into the ground, grounding it down, and you don't even know. And so Jackson passes away, rest in peace.
Yeah.
And
And
you're
not to
like,
mention, working as a litigator, you're supposed to be like a pit bull in the courtroom. So like
yeah,
I didn't want to let my guard down, so to speak, and I didn't share this with colleagues.
you
And
didn't want a stigma or like totally get that.
yeah. So I finally realized it wasn't the way I wanted to live. I wanted to experience more joy. I wanted to be more present for my children, for my husband, and for really all of the goodness in my life, but I wasn't able to see it because I was
Mhm.
in constant fight or flight mode.
Mhm.
So I finally enrolled in the MBSR program. It meets once a week for 2.5 hours each week for 8 consecutive weeks.
Okay.
And it really was a life changer. I'd say about 3 weeks into the program, I noticed how I was getting in my own way, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. I use those words all the time.
Yeah. And even just getting into work, I would go to turn on my computer. And before I even logged into my email, I would assume I missed a deadline, or I was getting called for trial, or I forgot this, or I messed this up. So I started to be able to see how I was perceiving some of the stressors in my life, and just the ability to see that and then to offer myself a bit of ease through, with the tools that I had learned in the mindfulness program. There was the tiniest little shift. It was tiny, but yet at the
Mhm.
same time, it was
It's
profound.
huge.
I started sharing. I had some colleagues I was close with, some associates we had started at the firm where I was working, and I started sharing with them this program that I was in, the MBSR program, and they noticed, even without me telling them. They started to see a bit of a difference in my demeanor, and I think I was like smiling in the office more. And the more and more I spoke about it, they said, you should speak about this. You should share it with us. So I offered like an hour lunch and learn to a bunch of partners and the
Hmm.
shareholders and associates, and it was really well received. I had later that day people coming to my office, some of them in tears, just saying how what I shared really resonated with them, and even just to take a moment to feel the breath, like getting back to your framework, but just giving yourself the permission to pause, to notice how you are. I mean, sometimes just that attention, it can make all the difference. So that really encouraged me to continue teaching and speaking about mindfulness. I took the extensive training program, the teaching program at Jefferson, where I took the foundational course, and then I interned. And the pandemic, it was really a blessing in disguise. I'm so grateful that I learned these tools before the pandemic, because It helped me to manage all that I was doing, my job, the family, and to really tap into our inner strength, my inner strength, but the inner strength that is really innate. It's here for all of us. And shortly, it was probably midway through the pandemic that I was asked to join the amazing team of teachers at Jefferson. So in addition to teaching the foundational program and graduate level classes at Jefferson, I have my own mindfulness business where I teach, as you mentioned, like a 6-week program, but to complement what it is you're offering, I offer longer programs, 3, 6 month long programs.
Awesome. I feel like you maybe answered like a lot of my questions there because we covered like, sort of what you do, how we mesh, how it came about, which I think is amazing. I mean, you're a warrior, or like, I was thinking, I thought I had it hard. Like, I mean, look, it's all relative. I definitely went through my struggles and I overcame so much, and I'm not putting down what I went through, but like to have babies, to be stressed at work like that, and to keep it all in and to not share it and to not really crumble. Like, and the real fact is you were crumbling inside, right? And that's
Oh,
the
100%,
but you have
100%.
you're really, really strong. And then to be able to get to a place where you're like, you know what? I need to carve out the time. I'm an executive and I'm a mom and I'm a wife, but I need to make this time where like I'm gonna survive. Like I'm in fight or flight.
Yeah, and I think what I noticed, and I think this is a common theme for a lot of overachievers, professionals, executives, lawyers, we show up for everyone else, whether it's our clients, it's our hearings, it's our meetings, it's our children, it's our pets, whoever it is, but we tend to put ourselves on the back burner. And I say, like, if we're not in a good space mentally, physically, emotionally, we can't show up for all those people that we care for. So with mindfulness, with what you teach, we're learning how to really show up for ourselves. And
For the first time in some of our lives, right?
yeah, and sometimes people feel like that's a little bit selfish, but it's not. It's by showing up for yourself, showing up for this moment, showing up for your life, you're really showing up that much more for all those around you. So it's a gift, I say, that really ripples out.
You can't drink from an empty cup, they say, right?
Yes, yes, yes. So we're filling up our cups and we're nourishing ourselves, and then with that nourishment, we can in turn help all those around us. But it really starts with noticing what's
I
here,
love that
noticing
word.
how we are, and then from there we can find ways to support ourselves.
So thank you for all that explanation. So I'm going to cut it short without asking a ton more questions because we're hitting the 45-minute mark, and we have so much more. That's part of the gift in this with us. We have so much more to talk about. This was just scratching the surface, but getting into anxiety, getting into life transitions, getting into partnership and communication, and all the things that we go through. At first, you and I were talking, and it was like, we want to focus on, we're both in our mid 40s, right? We want to focus on the mid 40 woman who's dealing with A, B, and C, right? But then as we talked, it was like, wait a minute. Our stuff pertains to so many more people than that, whether you're 23 or 63. So let's not pigeonhole ourselves, right? We have so much to share. So we're going to have this once a week for 45 minutes at least, because now I see that you and we jive so much. Like it goes so fast. I
We're
have
talkers.
an appointment at 1, so I can't. I'd love to. But let's talk. Those are some of the things we're going to talk about on Conscious Corner together. And this is our first one. We're going to get a little more techie where we can have like maybe a commercial or some music. But right now it's bare bones. We're like a startup podcast, but either way, I feel that the information and the experiences that you and I are sharing will be so impactful, because for people to, even when you were talking about what you've been through, it resonated so much with me that I'm like, this is going to resonate with a lot of people. It's not just a 40-year-old woman. It's not just a wife. It's not
Yeah.
just a lawyer. It's a, you know, like we have a really kind of broad niche in that way.
Mhm.
So I'm so excited to do this weekly with you and kind of for people to look forward to the different topics and, you know, just kind of make it really mindful and teach people how to do certain things and then have them contact us later for like, wow, Annie, I'd love to learn more about your framework. And I really want to do some mindfulness too. How do you do both? Well, that's what we do. So
Yeah. And I enjoy this time. Your energy, Annie, is contagious. I can feel it virtually, like
thank
across the
you.
screen. So,
Thank God,
I
because all
mean,
my clients are virtual. So if they couldn't feel my energy, I wouldn't have a job. But listen, real quick, it's 12:58. How do people get you if they want to get you?
yeah, great question. So, my website is a great way to learn more about me, learn more about mindfulness, get free resources. It's CourtneyScholnickMindfulness.com. I'm also really active on LinkedIn. So, you can look me up on LinkedIn, Courtney Skolnick. I share all sorts of upcoming events and different offerings for mindfulness practice. So, yeah, there are two great ways to contact me. And how about you? How's the best way to
Same thing.
communicate?
My website's a great place to see more about what I've done and who I've done it with, but also annieleib.com and it's Leib. Everybody misspells that. And it just you can make a calendar appointment with me on Calendly. It just takes you right to that. Talks a little bit about my programs, but LinkedIn is really my bread and butter. That's where most people contact me. So shoot me a
Yeah.
message. I'm very easy to get a hold of. I will get back to you and that would be great. But, just follow us and listen to our podcast that we're going to have weekly. And, I hope it resonates. Like, I have no doubt that it will. And just there's so much more to learn from Courtney and from me that I can't wait to do it.
Likewise. So fun, Annie. Thank
So
you.
fun. So don't hang up. I'm stopping the recording, but everybody, we'll see you next time.